Greetings all my little night owls. It's time for me to finish, or try and finish this story, the vampire one, Sinny's in Sin. I'll just get on with it. Those few years that I've read or listened up so far will be aware that it started in Edinburgh, but there was a meeting of the Vampires High Council, and there's only 30 or so tops vampires in the world. And then there was a fight between Van Helsing and Vlad the Impaler, where Vlad's just about dead and Van Helsing's unconscious above him just now. But we're going back to the future site, future site of Vatican City, 03 AD, or CE if you want. It's a Christian Empire, makes no difference. Anyway. The master called the gathering of the full assembly to order. 8 whites sat in front, 3 rows of 8 behind them, all of whom were vampire or confederates. That was the entirety of the species, vampire. With even the controlled tone, the master began. We long have known that our fate, be it gift or penance, is to exist in the shadows and the darkness. Ignorance and fear guarantee extreme hostility should ever a single one of us be exposed for what we are. The master looks to the left, slowly turning his head until he was gazing right, then sharply back to look straight forward. He says with prayer-like force, "This is how it is." He pauses a moment before continuing evenly again. We have ever relied on pure facts, confirmed by the mathematical expression of said facts to be our guide. Then with the fierceness of before, and so it shall remain. The master looks around at faces long known, many under multiple guises, and his own face, the whitest shade of pale, reflects only an already accepted grim determination. Our 2 finest mathematical confederates have spent 3 years with the Indian Sanskritic pi and zero conceptualist Arabayata, known as Confederate Sedant, and the conclusions are indisputable and startling. And shocking, he added sadly. Much about the secret meeting of a deliberately and reasonably successfully cultivated as mythical species gives regard to pure mathematical conversation, and it is pointless to discuss it as it is absolute proven facts expressed in another language. Loose translation applied. The chamber was advised that their own population was dictated by and heavily restricted by the numbers of humans with the necessary blood type. And it comes down to a very slim thread of existence, only certain if lived within the tightest of disciplinary parameters. Expressed very simply, taking into account that each member needs 2 or 3 persons to feed upon each week, killing them in the shadows. The master looked up now in real anger, and taking into account that around 5% are not killed but allowed to spread atrocious killings of their own, as well as damning reports of our existence, keeping our whites too long away from more pressing duty. He detaches emotional content again before almost whispering. If this is allowed to continue, it will be 71 years before there are more vampire than human, condemning both species to an end. Or, he says with anger now dominant, we'll be hunted mercilessly until our own end. Neither option is acceptable, hence this assembly here this night. But first things first, ... Edinburgh, Scotland, AD 1986. Sinny, as his mates knew him, would be described as goth by the uneducated and described as a goth by cunts that should know better. He himself just liked the colour black in general and had good taste. His flat, his hair, his dress sense, music, women. There's lots more, but he considered they 5 essentials as fucking essential. Made fucking sense. Ivan Nelson was Polish, although he sounded as local as any of his many friends and several good mates of both sexes, and some of the cross-sex, trans-fucking any sex, unisex, and you never ken why sex. He loves his underground club scene, and he was a complete fucking slut. He'd shagged, and been shagged by, just about everyone worthy of his high standards, in especial the sensual allure of presentation. He was a quality before quantity guy, and whenever a new face, as he thought of them, appears on the scene, he quickly runs his own mental assessment of the relative hotness factor of said stranger. The attention he gives a new face depends on how much his interest is piqued. When Pt2of2, known as Massey, arrived in Edinburgh's underground indie scene, Sinny was not wrong to describe her as fucking outrageously hot. She was indeed the very epitome of Sinny's type, the actual embodiment of what he loves. He makes it crystal clear to his peers that if any one of them goes there before he does, they better get the fuck out of Dodge before he finds them. He is so hypnotised, almost by this lassie, and so distracted from other things, even his best friend is more than a wee bit perplexed. Sinny's attraction to Massey is something his mates are unsure about or what to make of. They've just never seen him as loved up to the extent that he is now. He's always been a total bastard to lovers, disinterested after the successful conquest and fucking of each one. Wham bam, thank you ma'am, oh you pretty thing, spaced oddity, everything is hunky-dory. But nae cunt expected changes. Look out you rock and rollers. That cunt Sinny's acting like he's a fucking lassie, and the cunt's got his head up his arse, man, were typical examples of the kind of shite being spoken about him. Never his own face, obviously, over pints, spliffs and lines, usually all together, and as usually by the same people, exes, cast-off, one-night stands, one-week stands, who weirdly felt superior to the previous categories, the fucking rages, and subtle variations of each. Sinny really was an hedonistic glutton. Whenever bitchy shite and such crap was thrown at him for simple indulgence in things obviously enjoyable, it was an old did he duck, did he fuck situation. It will be a cold day in hell when I ever feel the slightest fucking need to justify myself to any cunt, especially nosy bastards of whom idea of education is reading the fucking newspaper, and to whom the Louvre is a fucking big toilet. He was an example of Sinny's attitude towards a whole bunch of uneducated and pretentious limited bastards that hung around. He was indeed, though, acting far outside of normal character and knew it well. In fact, Sinny was struggling actually to keep his interest in Massey and his feelings towards her just at obsessed levels. She was beyond intriguing to him, and he loved spending time with her. She was as hot in bed as he could have dreamed for, and was well-travelled and well-read, and he loved the hours in the dead of night spent in front of his open fireplace, discussing great philosophy, historical events, and such, whilst log and coal crackled. She was indeed his perfect mate and partner. Her carefree love of the small things in the world and her appreciation of, and undoubtedly for, the finer things in life made her perfect. Consequently, henceforth, therefore, accordingly, thus, all are appropriate words, and all are fluttering in and out of Sinny's mind. It is with the deepest of black sadness within his body that Massey also represents his darkest nightmare. For all she was, her perfection, her very self, so easy to love, she represents Sinny's agonising and imminent pain. Her, far too traumatic to imagine. He prays of survival, which leaves him reasonably emotionally intact. His friends haven't a fucking clue about the turmoil within Sinny and continue to be unreasonable bastards. Sinny only has pity for them though, stupid cunts he'd muse. Gothic-earing dressing styles were his taste, and nae cunt with a pulse could deny that style made women even more desirable than usual. Extremely fuckable, to be honest, he silently confessed to himself. Well, he knows where his narcissistic and horribly chauvinistic views are rooted, but he's learned how to be extremely comfortable with himself and his current lifestyle choices. It's a bunch of stupid cunts who are unknowingly worshipping the ethereal whiff of a fucking ancient and black religion that irritates the fuck out of me, he'd often think. The Banshees' first single, Love in a Void, was playing in his head. The post-punk genre of music currently being created is fucking excellent. Best stuff since very early reggae. And Sinny's collection is wide, varied, vast. Massey, of course, loves everything and anything Sinny does, and is a picture of beauty, whose presence is always good. Not one of the people slagging Sinny off would turn her down given half a fucking chance. Hypocrisy can everywhere in these situations. Vatican City, Rome, continuing meeting underground sanctum AD 03. First things first. The master words were loud and stern, but barely heard by several members of this particular assembly of Rome, some of whom were literally stunned catatonic, having perceived instantly how thin was the thread holding up their approaching doom. Others sat in uncertain silence, absorbing the master's word. Their own demise within a century, some of the assembly breaking protocol by allowing possibly loved or cared for humans to become not permitted. The academic understanding of both facts expressed itself as confused look and shock and anger on the face of most. The master looks left and right again, then sharply forward. Breaking the base rule of allowing not permitted is punishable by immediate death without prejudice. He made the slightest indication with his hand and said aloud, as it has ever been. The assembly whites were instantly mobile and jumped amongst the other members with blades flashing and grim, determined looks. Within seconds, 17 vampire and some confederates lay slain, and the whites sat with sword back in sheath. We are now cleansed of traitors. Each slain confederate and vampire has breached the code and endangered our own existence. The master unrolled a parchment of papyrus which comprised a list of names. 9 years of work by our whites is ended, he says gravely. Now 100 score and more begins. He reaches down and lifts up an ancient icon which resembles a semi-waned moon. We start with oaths retaken, and sacred promise given. All hands placed upon the icon, and all oaths spoken had undoubted and established veracity, vetted and confirmed by the whites. The master looked saddened by the night's events, but happier too when he concluded the gathering. We convene after 400 lunar cycles, when a total eclipse will occur from this city's perspective. Carpe diem. Edinburgh, Scotland, AD 1986. Sinny's mind operates differently from other cunts, an actual fact, but it had taken him longer than it should have to realise the fucking contrast and variations staring him in his face. He recalls how much of a fucking dickhead he felt about it when the assembly letter arrived. He quickly attributes the error, and rightly so, to the fact that he was dealing with some bad shit at the time, and just as quickly put it out of his mind. The ability of emotional detachment was something he was learning and was a massive virtue, but is easily confused with selfish attitude. Sinny applied a pure pragmatic approach to life because, like it or not, shit happens, and would continue to happen for a long time. His exact thinking as he was making his way to spend the weekend with Massey. They're invited to several parties as is normal, and would always attend most. Tonight, however, it had been arranged for Sinny to cook Massey a nice dinner as a prelude to an evening that Massey promised to make memorable. You don't have the remotest idea of just how fucking memorable this night will be, Massey, thought Sinny, who was now in the grip of a sadness so deep and harsh it would distract most men. He wasn't most men, fortunately. He does love Massey in a way that's precious and pure, but cannot ignore the ever more frequent thrill of anticipation infusing his mind, washing unwanted but undiluted waves of pleasure all over him regarding what must happen this night. He bounds up the few steps to Massey's flat and uses the key she had given him to enter. "It's me, Mass," he calls, whilst doffing his jacket and boots. He slips his feet into a pair of comfy trainers, black of course. He keeps his rucky with him into the main room as usual. His baccy, weed and other things needed at hand were inside, and was convenient. "Hey, Massey," he says, giving her pale cheek a soft kiss. "As usual, you look great and smell alluring." His fingers trace softly down her slender arms. "I'm glad you're wearing that dress, babe. You really suit that knee-length look." The perfect balance between cleavage and thigh, he laughed. Massey approaches him and gives him a kiss back with a bit more passion than he. "Thanks, Sinny. I appreciate you saying so." Her accent made it sound like, "Thanks, Sinny, it appreciates you saying so," which was indeed on his mental list of things he loved about her. Poor lassie, jumps into his head, but he violently rejects that one. If she does fail the test, I will definitely not falter. He bows and silently prays. To whom who prayed to would be interesting to know. South Eastern Europe, AD 1422. Van Helsing felt consciousness return. Bit by bit, he began to regain his wits. He was actually aware of the slightest of sounds, and his eyes were narrow, wary. He notes details until now unseen, and his vision is fierce. The small differences clearly visible despite the oppressive darkness. He is aware of the small variations of scents between each tree, and could identify the scents of sweet flowers too, despite the deluge. His awareness is heightened. As he regains full consciousness, The reason for his acutely honed senses becomes clear. He looks at the bloody relic in his clenched fist, and the Count's death stink assails his nose and throat. He can discern another blood, and it took him by surprise when the realisation it was his own first dawned on him. He looks down at Vlad, who is gasping with the very last air in his rotten chest, or hissing, inaudible to any normal person, but clearly heard by Van Helsing as a triumphant laugh. He now understands his doom, and with crashing suddenness, the realisation of what had occurred in the period he was insensate over Vlad's body is burned into his being. His awareness buckled with the initial burden before arranging itself and then manifesting as an horrific, louder and louder wailing scream. The dismay within didn't travel far, for the storm seemed to feed frenzied and powerfully on the agonising and godless groans from Dr. Abraham Van Helsing, renowned hunter of the undead, now a vampire. Edinburgh, Scotland, AD 1986. Sinny and Massey were snuggling on the large settee that dominated Massey's living room. Full bellies and post-coital comfort added to an ambience accentuated by large candles thoughtfully placed and music selected for the mood. Screwed up eyes and screwed down hairdo sounded Bauhaus version of Ziggy Stardust. Making love to his ego. Sinny decided he could procrastinate no longer. The first communique regarding Pt2of2 had been months ago. The most recent message was blunt and to the point. 1 more week and another of the whites would be assigned to the issue. He accepted he was only delaying the inevitable, but assured the order it would be done by the week suggested. Tonight was the night. Honey, said Sinny, moving forward to stand up. Hold on a second, babe, please, he said, smiling, and stood up on the tips of his toes and reached up high towards the ceiling, letting a satisfied sound escape from his mouth. Oh, aye, a fucking good stretch after a meal is just the cherry on top, eh? Sinny was still reaching up with his arms and stretching the stiffness from his muscles. Anywho, I was going to ask if you wanted your shoulders massaged and your neck rubbed the way you like it, he said, fumbling careful-like in his rucky at the same time, and removing from it a small, rectangular wooden box. He put it on the table but made no direct mention of it. Massey remained relaxed but clearly curious. Have you brought me a gift, she asks. Sort of, Massey hen, sort of. Depends on your point of view. He replied, and then fired a question at her very quickly, watching her reaction intensely. Have you heard of the 2-4? He says, using an old, long unused Romanian tongue. Of course I have. She pauses, aware, alert. Is he wise to her error? She feigns innocence. Hey, excuse me. She feigns innocence. You know I'm multilingual, Sinny, for fuck's sake. Massey remained relaxed but was literally petrified, and it showed out clearly. I studied and speak many languages, old and new, so what are you looking at me like that for? She puts her most wee girl face on and looks at Sinny like a lost fucking puppy. Open the box, Massey, he says with an odd look at her, expectant. She reaches out for the box with a perplexed expression and closes her fingers around the middle before an almost primal scream hissing filled the room as the box utterly rejected her touch. She runs in terror for the door, but finds Sinny has sprinkled holy water over the handle and the floors around her. Her eyes are alert, and Sinny senses the lack of a soul in them. Retreating to the settee, she huddles up and starts to weep. Who are you really, Sinny? She asks, in her very voice, devoid of soul, incapable of love, only deceit, cruelty. Who are you? She repeats, trying to add an ancient and barely known spell of tongue to the question, hoping to gain some control. Who am I? Sinny repeats her question, imitating her tone precisely. Who am I? Someone who merely fucking laughs at your little girl spells to start with, he responded, waving his hands as though dismissing an underling, but causing the massy thing to be pinned, unmoving, against the couch. Who knows, or can even approach an understanding of the pain in Sinny's body, where everything seemed to hurt far more than he can bear? Yet somehow he manages. He manages to ignore how much it hurts when Massey's own doom approaches, which is equally agonising for him. He manages hearing it pulling from her throat the most vocal hurting he'd ever borne. No novice stranger was he to the extent of fear people feel when death's approach is heard. When it's someone beloved in that situation, turmoil is ever present. However, no stranger either was he to the demand of exercising the severest of discipline, learned with great sorrow and at personal cost. And he lets the necessary reason for his act become his dominant thought. His heightened awareness is now concentrated and focused on his sense of duty. At the moment when he hammers the blessed icon into the massy thing's chest and through its heart, Sinny has already accepted it as a simple cleansing. His ability to emotionally detach from situations like this so easily was another lesson learned at great cost, but one for which he was extremely grateful for. Taking the last few minutes to look around, he lets his mind consider one of the parties he could have been in attendance at his sometimes pal Dex's. Dexter Chench was a raj bastard whose parties were fucking legendary. There were never any fucking idiots invited into what Sinny had to admit was a brilliantly select representation of the party lover whites, and always a surplus of hot, crazy lassies from the sauna brothels around. A sound system any club would cherish. Put a cherry on top of that. Say hello, just wave goodbye. The words of Soft Cell's song entered into Sinny's head, jerking him back to the present. Fuck, was the wistful and now pointless thought in his head. Like everyone who'd experienced the sheer vibrancy and variety of its underground club scene and then had to leave, he'd fucking miss Edinburgh. But shit happens. Southeastern Europe, Transvaal, AD 1422. Van Helsing holds his hunger back for as long as he can, which is not long. He is both shocked and frightened by the knowledge of what will be. The academic understanding of the awful need felt did little to help. And with that learned thought predominant, he condemned his own mortal soul when he falls greedily, hungrily, lustily on the still bleeding wound he inflicted on Vlad Dracula, and sucks willingly of the rotten corpse. How much takes the need away? surely at least until he gets back to Rome and appraises the order of events this black night in the Transvaal. The doctor looks now with an uncaring indifference at Dracula's molested form, drenched by blood water. He concludes that draining every small reservoir of the Count's remaining ichor would afford him the energy required to reach Rome, with enough wit left to confer with the Master and the Whites. He determines that a man such as he could succeed in the journey quite easily. The hard part came first, and he kneels in the downpour and continues his unspeakable feeding, justifying the act as essential should he ever hope to see the Vatican city gates before such awful need possessed his very senses again. A trail of dead, exsanguinated bodies across Europe attested only to his weakness in fighting the hunger. Edinburgh, Scotland, AD 1986. Sinny's been standing for hours. After his successful mental purge of the pain and his pleasant and smile-provoking thoughts of parties present and past, his attention turned to previous love affairs which are terminated by cleansing. It had been over 10 by now, he muses, and still it initially hurts as acutely as the first one. He recalls Lady Devereux, a wonderful human being, and with blood as pure as pure. He'd kept her going too long also, prompting the first of many reprimands from the council's order. The thought of so lovely a creature as she pushed from his heart, his head, the last considerations for Massey. He was going to miss Scotland and Edinburgh. He whistles to himself. What an awesome city, so pleasing to the eye, and everything steeped in. He stops and smiles a distant smile. Barely 15 people in Scotland are aware of the true history of Edinburgh and its crucial, if not critical, contribution to the development of the modern world they're living in. He makes a vow to change that state of affairs in the future, in particular about the deliberately undisclosed and very much inhabited dwelling areas underneath the whole Castle Rock and famous Royal Mile Hill, directly downslope to the Palace of Holyrood. That'll be a wee surprise to the whole fucking world, never mind for the city, he said to no one, thinking about the weird but extremely friendly strange ones, as they were referred to by the only persons aware of them, and the successful and thriving civilization below Edinburgh's old streets, the Saltire Blue Kings. But in the future, there was plenty of time. His mind was already turning away from Scotland too. Sinny had been hearing some great reports of a great fucking interest regarding Peru, and aside from the fact that it too was a gorgeous country, the indigenous blood had a dark richness which was a rarity these days, and he adored the thick, lustrous hair displayed in such numbers by men and women. Additional to everything else, Sinny was curious as to how much of Machu Picchu had been uncovered, and he recalls its beauty when he first seen that incredible dwelling hundreds of years previous. The brilliance of the nightlights reflecting on the polished stone pathways before sunrise gave a hue of golden green over the whole city. Hundreds and hundreds of buildings of all sorts and sizes. Sinny casts the last few thoughts over Edinburgh and is satisfied he's covered the basics. Will pretty much comprise letting a few people know that Massey and he were off travelling, hey ho, and off we fucking go, he says to no one. The council's team will clear the flats, his and Massey's, and then nae cunt would remember them in a year. Bunch of crazy fucking rages. It's been exceptionally educational and an absolutely brilliant ride, accompanied by many brilliant rides, were his laughter-infusing parting words to Edinburgh. Wise and accurate words. His parting words to the Massey thing were, 12 twice, my love, no more and no exceptions. But a total fucking pity, like. And he turned to leave everything. Epilogue. Lima, Peru, AD 1987. Ivan Nelson was not Polish. He was Dutch, had been for 600 years when he was born into the Van Helsing family. Ivan Nelson had several identities, but as a partner he liked dark humour and irony. His current identity is an Indian from near Pakistan. His name is Dr. Abvanel Singh, a wealthy doctor on sabbatical to South America. He stood and thanked each of the stewardesses for their professionalism after the plane had landed at Jorge Chavez Airport, giving over a gratuity that was 10 grand in Peruvian currency. The stewardess he'd fucked in the first class toilet had given him her number, but he'd binned it. He was free. He felt fucking good. It's great to be alive. Thank you, Vlad, he thought inwardly. I am back. He lifts down his rucksack and prepares to disappear into Lima. No possible continuation. Needs clarification of the assembly. Possible series of shots. Full stop. It's taken a wee bit longer than I thought it would, guys. The dozen or so people that listen to it, oh, fucking great. Thank you so much. You know what? I just want people to listen to the stories. Share them on if you want. I'm no worried about that. I didn't want you to say, hey, like and subscribe and fucking press that button and all that pish. I don't think I get enough fucking people. Make 6.5 pence every 10 years. No, a like would be nice. But yeah, just read the damn thing or listen to the damn thing, obviously. I think you can press a button that reads it out to you. I'm not fucking sure. But if anybody wanted a PDF or a Word document of a couple of stories and that, just send me an email address that I can send them off to, and I'm quite fucking happy to do that. Oh man, I'm always glad to get these glasses off. Fucking nose bit, man. I think it's because I've had this nose broke about 10 times during my life. Usually playing football, or fucking falling over when I was drunk. Listen, again, thank you very much. You've no idea how much it means to me. God bless everybody. I say it a lot, but I'm true. The love, it goes with you. Take care. Bye.